Okay, well, welcome to the Was It Good podcast, where we review movies and TV shows. I'm Ravi, joined by Arjuna, and we usually have a third brother here, but unfortunately he got trapped in some carbonite. Oh, sorry, that's a typo. Colorado, actually.
Oh,
yeah. Poor guy, unfortunately. We have a special pod. Obviously, we're here at Star Wars Celebration 2022 here in the Anaheim Convention Center. The first celebration in, what, 3 years?
Yeah, since Chicago 2019.
Very, very fun times. Glad to be here. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that was announced today. Andor. What else? I already forgot.
They showed a teaser from Mando Season 3.
Very cool.
On the celebration stage. They announced Skeleton Crew, the John Watts show.
With Jude Law.
Starring Jude Law.
Yeah. You have a theory already about that show.
Oh, so
let's hear it.
We're jumping right in. Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what
Yeah, so Skeleton Crew, I don't know, I'm sure everybody here heard about that announcement today, but Jude Law is announced to star in it, and there has been some speculation already that he is playing, potentially, everyone's favorite Grand Admiral Thrawn. I've seen some Twitter speculation, and because it takes place in that Mando timeline, that Mandoverse, as they're calling it, could be fun.
Do you remember who here was at Chicago Celebration? Oh, so a few of us. Do you all remember the giant banner in the the main hall?
Yeah.
Do you guys remember there was a picture of Thrawn there?
Yes.
And I think one of us said it was like, that guy looks like Pierce Brosnan.
He did.
Like very much Thrawn looked right. I guess it's not going to be.
Who knows? Who knows? It's all speculation.
That's
the
much
fun of this.
Yes. Reckless speculation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Obviously, this is also the 20th anniversary for Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
A movie that was what, our first Star Wars film in theaters?
Yeah, our first Star Wars movie experience for us.
Do you, when you look back at that movie, being like the first Star Wars film that you saw, do you still look at that movie the same way you look at it now, like when you were a kid?
Oh, absolutely not. So for me, I was 9 when I saw that movie in theater, and so it was a very different experience than now, 20 years later, looking at that movie now, because for me as a 9-year-old, I loved that movie. It was colorful. There was lots of explosions. There was lots of action. It was everything you wanted from a Star Wars. I'm pretty sure right before we saw it, we had rewatched Episode 1 on good old DVD.
No, it was no, the first time we saw it was on like VHS.
We saw it first on VHS, but I think to get ready for Episode 2, we watched it on DVD. And again, as an 8-9-year-old, Episode 1 is great. Pod racing, lightsabers, Naboo starfighters, the whole thing. So
Duel of Fates.
Yeah, I mean, all that stuff is great. And even like watching there are still moments from the prequel trilogy, because we all know like the prequel trilogy is not the greatest cinematic experience that has ever been.
It's a fun experience,
but it is fun. And like as a kid, I really enjoyed those movies, especially because like the original trilogy was more of an idea. Like you saw the movies, but I didn't necessarily understand them at 6, 7, 8 years old, like I did necessarily the prequel trilogy. And it was as I got older, I started to understand the actual original trilogy. So for me, that prequel trilogy was kind of my first Star Wars, right? So there's a fondness to them that you have as a kid. And then when you get older and you get a little bit more jaded and you watch movies maybe with more of a critical eye, and you can kind of compare them to the stuff that you're seeing today. You can pick apart stuff and you can nitpick and say, I don't like this part, I don't like this part, this CGI doesn't look good, well, this doesn't make sense,
right,
et cetera, et cetera. But still a really enjoyable experience. And
do you remember, so like when we went to go see it, our mother was out of town. She was at some wedding where, like India or something.
Yeah, in India. That's
and our dad was watching the three of us, and we like basically tricked him, begged him into like taking us to go see it.
Yeah, because it was opening weekend.
Yeah,
it was a huge movie, and so like it was hard to get tickets, and we asked him to go on like a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah,
and we were a family that would go for like Sunday mornings, matinee.
Yeah,
movies that came out 3-4 weeks later, so you have a full theater to yourself. So it was a different experience for us.
Packed theater
to go into a packed theater, right? Full of a lot of fans, especially as kids. But it was so much fun. Like the crowd really enjoyed that movie, and it was one of the first experiences for me, and probably for you, and for all of us, where we got to really like feed into that energy of the fandom and like, wow, like Star Wars is really fun, and because we didn't have that with Episode 1, we obviously didn't have that with the original trilogy that came out before we were born.
Right, which is where we're celebrating the 45th year of Star Wars as well this year.
Right,
45 years. That's almost 50.
Yeah, you're right. 5 years away. It's great math.
Yeah, I'm so good at math. Math is hard. But you remember what Dad said to us as we left the theater, and it always stuck with me because I thought it was kind of funny. And like our dad actually grew up as well with Star Wars, like when he was a kid.
Yeah.
But he said as we were walking in the theater, he was like, "Oh wow, why are the weapons better in Episode 2?" Just because obviously like the technology was different, right? Like CGI was a big new thing that Hollywood, George Lucas, everyone was exploring. So like when you compare the prequel trilogies to like the original with its practical effects and everything, yeah, you would, if you were not kind of, not super involved, but like super into the whole Star Wars thing, you're just kind of looking as like an outsider or whatever, you'd be like, yeah, the tech and everything seems better. From like a timeline period, you would argue that Episode 2 is after the originals as opposed to being prequels.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think George has always talked about that he wanted to wait for technology to catch up with the vision that he had for the prequel trilogy, because he wanted to show this great war with all of these clones and all of these Jedi and all of these droids. And the technology just wasn't around when he made the original trilogy. Right. So like he needed that, and yeah, you know, it looks different, and you know, but that's okay. Like, you know, Obi-Wan's gonna look great when that comes out tonight.
In T-minus, what is it? Let me see here. 6 hours and 50 minutes.
Right, and like that show's gonna look great, and it's gonna look amazing, but like, you know, we're not gonna bat an eye that the technology looks different and whatnot, and even like, look at Rogue One, like what Darth Vader's able to do in that very ending scene, and then, you know, in theory, a couple hours later, he's a little bit more stiff. What he's doing in Episode 4.
I remember the,
but like it's still cool.
The Vader
like, it's still cool
fight.
to see destroy everybody. You know, like I think there's you can overlook some of that stuff, because as long as it makes sense, you know, it's about enjoying what's out.
Yeah, sense of disbelief and just kind of enjoying everything that you're seeing.
Right.
Wow, you're like jumping, as I wasn't gonna get into the Obi and lightsaber stuff till later, but let's just talk about it. Like, I mean, one of the, like, obviously the Obi-Wan Kenobi series is coming out later today. We're getting 2 episodes, and then, you know, you have individuals like Kathleen Kennedy. A lot of people, Hayden, Ewan, have said that, you know, there's going to be the biggest, you know, the return of Vader
it's the
versus
biggest rematch,
right?
Yeah,
and obviously, like, their big fight, I would argue, was on Mustafar in Episode 3. A lot of twirling lightsabers. Then it was just kind of waving them around in Episode 4. So where would you like if the scale is like waving lightsabers and like all this crazy shit in Episode 3, and then Episode 4 is just waving,
so just a little stiffer.
Where do you think?
Maybe they just had some back pain when they woke up that morning.
I mean, I woke up with back pain.
Yeah, I did too. Like, we're getting old, you know. That's part of life. No, I think somewhere in between, because I do think they're thinking about this show that it's not obviously directly right after Episode 3.
Right.
This is a set amount of years after, right? And a set amount of years obviously before Episode 4, when Obi-Wan is a little bit older, when he is retired and he's Ben Kenobi, and he's like, oh, Obi-Wan Kenobi, I haven't heard that name in a long time. Like, he's not there yet. And especially if, you know, they are going to meet again in the battlefield and kind of fight, I think it's going to look good, you know? Like, there's a reason they brought back Hayden. Honestly, anyone could put on the Darth Vader armor. It's just going to be Darth Vader, right? Because that's, you know, you can get a tall actor to kind of portray the guy in the suit, but there's a reason they brought back Hayden, and I think they want to tap into the energy between you and Hayden that they had in Episodes 2 and 3, because that chemistry is important. Like, that relationship on screen started 20 years ago in Attack of the Clones, and is obviously such a vital relationship within the prequel trilogy, and it obviously fuels a lot of everything that follows, right? It's it's because of Obi-Wan's failures that Anakin falls to the dark side and becomes Darth Vader and leads to all of these events.
Whoa. Is it solely on Obi? I feel like it's also on the entire Jedi Council.
No, it's not all on one guy. But look, Obi-Wan was his master. You know what I'm saying?
Sure, but it takes a village, they say.
It did take a village to raise Anakin. You know, he was a bit of a problem child.
Big time of problem child.
But, you know, like, it is ultimately on Obi-Wan, right? Like, you go back to Phantom Menace and you think of Duel of the Fates. The reason it's called Duel of the Fates is because that's the fate of Anakin, right? If Qui-Gon dies here, Obi becomes his master. If he lives, it's Qui-Gon that's supposed to be Anakin's master. Who knows how that changes everything and how that's supposed to be. Like, Qui-Gon was much more of a father figure to Anakin in Episode 1, and maybe that's what he needed, and Obi-Wan wasn't necessarily that. Not that
he was forced into it, right?
Yeah, he wasn't, he was a Padawan in Episode 1, right? And then his master gets killed in front of him. He kills Darth Maul, and he all of a sudden now has this new Padawan in Anakin Skywalker, who is the chosen one for this big, you know, he's supposed to bring balance to the Force, right? The chosen one. And look, Obi is a young guy at that point. Like, he's just coming up. As a young guy himself. So that's what's fascinating about Star Wars, about all these different decisions and really kind of diving into it. And I think what I'm most excited for with Obi-Wan is to see that continuation, especially like, I think maybe I was like a lot of people when I heard, oh, it's going to be Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader, and being like, well, how is that supposed to happen, right? Like, we're supposed to believe that they fought on Mustafar and then they don't see each other again until A New Hope. But I'm interested, as always, to see how they kind of figure it out and recontextualize the story a little bit and how it all fits together, because I do think there is a way it fits together and is enjoyable and still entertaining and fun.
It's interesting you bring that up, because I remember like, we had, you, me, and Krishna, the brother, we had this discussion where it's like, why are we doing an Obi-Wan Kenobi series? Like, the man sits in a desert, watches this kid for X amount of years, woohoo, like, who cares? Obviously, what we've seen with the trailer, what we've heard, like, that's not the case. But in part of like our discussion, like Krishna brought this up, where he was like, you know, in Episode 4 there are very iconic lines, like, you know, when we last met, you know, you were the master and Padawan, et cetera, right? And like, one of the things that Krishna brought up was like, in Episode 4, Vader, there's a line where he says, you know, when we he says, there's a presence that I've not felt in a long time. And this is kind of like really kind of overstretching there, where it's like, we look at Episode 4 and that line as Vader talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi. But what if he was actually talking about like Luke Skywalker? Like, maybe in the series we do run into a part where like Vader is close to Tatooine and feels the presence of Luke, right? It's the idea of like taking things and kind of like reconceptualizing what they mean and adding kind of like new things to the story.
Well, I think also the beauty of like it being a long, long time. Like, this is only 5 years, I believe, after Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. So like, there's still like a 12-year gap, right?
12,
so like
13,
that can be a long, long time still. You know, like you can stretch things. Like, if I haven't seen you in like a year, that's a long, long time.
One could wish.
Yeah, wow, thank you. That's very nice of you to say.
You're welcome. Take it. No, I mean, that's also like the interesting too with Star Wars, and I'm sure maybe somebody here can explain time in Star Wars. Time is kind of different in terms of the way we see time here on planet Earth, right? In terms of a year around the sun, they've said things work kind of differently there.
It is sci-fi. You
can do whatever you want. It's plot device.
Yeah, you know, like it's fine.
Do you remember in episode? I'm not going to bring up episode. Looking also at like other things from today, like I would say one of the big things with the earlier panel today was Andor.
Yeah, we got a lot of Andor.
We got a lot of Andor.
Got a
trailer. We saw. I don't know if you saw. We saw Phase 2 clone troopers in there.
Yeah,
which was interesting because Andor is what?
Is 5 years
before Rogue One, which was interesting to me because I thought the Empire was phasing them out via like in the Bad Batch series we see there's a whole arc about.
Well, there's nothing to say that there's not flashbacks within Andor, right?
That's true.
You could have flashbacks of a young.
Well, I was more hoping maybe they're like rebellious clones.
Why not? I mean, the universe, the galaxy is a big place.
Very big.
There's factions of everything, everyone out there. You never know what's just lurking around the corner.
There's also more variants in Stormtrooper armors, so that some of us can go build more armor sets.
You do like building armor.
I very much do. But one of the things, there was a lot of information dropped in terms of what the first season is going to be 12 episodes. Yep. Second season is going to be 12 episodes as well. Yeah. And then that's the final season. It leads into
So Tony Gilroy, the creator of the show, described it as the first 12 will be 5 years before and will take place about the time frame will be about a year. And the second season will be the other 4 years. And essentially, he said, like, we're going to end right when Rogue One picks up, which is interesting. So, like, you're going to see a bunch of familiar characters. You know, Mon Mothma is returning, and if you've seen the trailer, it has like a big presence within that. Like, it seems like they're going to show a lot of the political flavor that is rife in the galaxy at that time, right? You know, it's gone from a republic to a galactic senate, right? And so it seems like there's a lot of politicalness, you know, within the Star Wars world to this as well. So it'll be kind of cool to track and see all these characters kind of change, and also, you know, what other characters from Rogue One could you get? Maybe K2SO potentially will show up at some point.
Saw Gerrera.
Yes, Forrest Whitaker is confirmed to be
excellent. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
What else in terms of like that panel? Because obviously you were lucky enough to actually be in that panel because of what you do.
Yeah.
I'm very jealous.
I mean, I think the big thing for me was seeing the teaser for Mando season 3, which I know they haven't.
Break it down for us, frame by frame. Go ahead.
I don't want to spoil it for everybody, but the big thing was they brought Katie Sackhoff onto the stage, you know, and
Starbuck was there.
Yeah, Starbuck.
That's amazing.
Like, not playing Bo-Katan, but playing Starbuck instead.
That's weird.
Okay. It's just Battlestar Galactica season 5 now. That's the.
Real quick, that's super side note because we do this all the time. Where are we at with the Battlestar reboot?
I honestly have no idea.
Anybody ever know? Okay. Anyway, sorry guys.
We're working on it.
Thank you.
But no, she came out and she was a big presence within the trailer, which makes sense, which tracks with what we saw in Mandalorian season 2.
Right.
With everything that happened with the Darksaber, with her, you know, wants the Darksaber, but, you know, our Mandalorian Din is the one that claims it, and she's like, you can't give it to me, and I have to win it fair in combat. And so it seems like that's going to be a big part of the show. And for those who've seen Book of Boba, obviously, Din has a pretty big arc in the back half of that show, where, you know, he's reunited with Grogu. He, you know, has a lot of discussions about the Darksaber. He's told by the armorer that he needs to return to Mandalore, and I think that is probably it's going to be a big part of, you know, Mandalorian season 3. It's like we're actually going to see the home world of these Mandalorians, even if Din isn't like a quote unquote traditional Mandalorian, right? He's a foundling. He's really going into that lore. I think it will be really cool and really fun to see. Only thing is, we have to wait until February.
It's like a year away.
Yeah, it's like 9 months, you know? 8 months.
It's forever.
It's fine.
Literally forever.
What about Andor?
We have Andor in August. We have Obi right now.
Yep.
And then that's it.
Probably a Bad Batch season 2.
That's true. There's the Bad Batch panel on Sunday.
Sunday.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get some news, hopefully.
Hopefully we'll get some news. That would be great. There's also the Mando Plus panel still coming.
That's right, on Saturday. Yeah, I'm sure they'll have more news, more stuff to show from that, and maybe Ahsoka, and anything else that's kind of, you know, part of the Favreau-Filoni collaboration.
The Mandoverse.
The Mandoverse.
Yes. Back to, like, obviously, like I said, this is the 20th for Attack of the Clones. And, you know, when the entire prequel series, like, came out, like we said, a lot of people kind of looked at it, did not like it. Like, we've seen, obviously, you know, they're doing the pressers for Obi right now, and that has been brought up quite a bit, right, where there's the discussion around, like, how critics kind of looked at that, how people took it. Hayden kind of also, stopped going to cons and everything just because of how people kind of reacted to it. You know, we're 20 years later. In that time, we got great things like Star Wars, the Clone Wars series, which bounced around between Cartoon Network, Netflix, then to Disney+. We got things like Bad Batch. We got things like Rebels. You know, do you think those things have kind of adjusted your view initially of Attack of the Clones? Do you think it's helped? Do you think it's made it worse?
I think for me, it's enhanced the prequel trilogy, you know, greatly, especially episodes 2 and 3, because you have so much more context of what's going on versus just seeing those movies individually. Because, you know, Clone Wars is builds up so much more of the character of Obi and Anakin and their relationship and all of these other characters that really enhance what's kind of going on. One of the most special things about Clone Wars Season 7 was seeing those moments that line up perfectly with Episode 3, with Order 66.
Right.
Like, I thought that was really cool to get some context of what else is going on and what happened just before with these characters. And, you know, it's weird that, like, an animated version not portrayed by those, the guys that portrayed them when Ewan and Hayden, like, has somehow kind of accentuated and brought up their performances in Episodes 2 and 3. And I think that's part of the reason that, you know, Hayden and Ewan got like lots of love today and have with the Obi-Wan show and being reunited, because there's more interest and there's more love for these characters, because it, you know, you've just gotten more time with them and it's been good time, and it's been exhilarating and exciting to see what's happened with those characters. And I think like potentially you have that with some of these shows, because it, you know, I was thinking about this the other day, but like basically all of Star Wars, but the original trilogy and like the sequel trilogy are prequels in some way, right? They go back and they kind of accentuate different stories and different characters like that. And that's what a lot of Star Wars is, a lot of the shows, prequel trilogy, et cetera, et cetera. So I think like part of the DNA of Star Wars is being able to like have these characters and then kind of go back and these events and be able to go back and kind of add more to the story. And it changes your view and your perspective on what you're actually seeing and experiencing.
There was a joke made a couple of years ago around like the Clone Wars, and like the point of the Clone Wars is really to just let you know minute by minute what happened between Episode 2 and 3. And it was also kind of a tester where like basically they could make content forever.
I mean,
because like
in theory, Clone Wars could have gone for another 7 seasons.
Yeah, because we only
a lot of story there.
Yeah, there's a ton, so we only followed what, 10, 15 different Jedi essentially, and a couple of batches of clones. So yeah, there were millions and millions of clones.
It's a war, you know.
Yeah.
Wars are large, and there's a lot going on, and it's fascinating, and I'm excited to see and continue to see like what parts of, you know, in between the established lore of Episodes 1 through 9 that they continue to mine. Like, I've always wanted to see like young Anakin and Obi before Episode 2.
Yeah, between Episode 1 and 2.
And even like Qui-Gon and really young Obi. You know, obviously you have some books and some comics and some time stuff, a lot of legend stuff as well that's no longer canon, but it'd be cool to see some of that stuff as well.
Which would you prefer, like a Qui-Gon and Obi, or Anakin and Obi?
I think just to diversify it slightly, you know, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan would be really, really cool. I think obviously it'd be tough for Liam Neeson to be a younger Qui-Gon, but I mean they have the technology. You know, they could. They've done it.
Yeah.
I mean, they did it with Luke.
Well, what if they did like a show with Yoda on Dagobah, and Qui-Gon could show up as a Force Ghost?
Yeah, I mean that's possible.
And then basically, you know, like how we all like made the like, why would you do an Obi show? He's just gonna be on a desert. Then they do a Yoda show, and also Yoda during Episodes 3 and 4 and everything. He was running around the galaxy as well.
I mean that's a little harder to believe. Like he's literally on this swamp planet without anything.
Yeah, I mean he's literally living in a shed.
Yes.
And no technology.
He's just meditating, you know? Maybe it's just like a meditation app, like you just meditate with Yoda on Dagobah.
That
could be fun. Could be.
Like a VR app.
Yeah.
Boom. There you go, meditation with Yoda on Dagobah.
It's $1 million idea.
I think it really is, actually. We should probably write that down. Back to Kenobi, because I love to jump around all over the place.
That's the way to do it.
Do you have any kind of insane, because obviously you come up with some really out there bold predictions.
Yes, that is true. If you listen to the podcast, I do love my bold predictions.
Usually your bold predictions start with so-and-so is going to die.
No, I mean that happened once. You and Krishna, our brother who's not here, love to just continue to bring it up.
Anyway, what would you say your bold prediction for Kenobi is? And let's do. I want to do like two bold predictions. So a bold prediction in show,
sure. In
terms of like what do you think is going to happen in show, and then kind of like what do you think? How do you think the world is going to react to Obi-Wan Kenobi? Because like whenever like a big piece of content or franchise does something, you know, there's always kind of like this weird social,
sure,
either like a trend or meme or something comes of it sometimes. Like, what do you think's gonna happen?
Like if there's like a Grogu's gonna appear?
Ooh, wow.
No, that's not my bold prediction. That's not my bold prediction. No, I think like maybe this is a cold prediction. Maybe it's not a great prediction. But I think there was going to be more Jedi than just Obi-Wan within the show. Like I think
there's more Jedi between episode 3 and 4, right?
Yeah.
Not just Obi?
You ever watched all the shows and played all the games? And
These are 5 or 6.
But there's some prominent ones.
Yeah.
Around the universe.
A lot of
no, but
Jedi.
obviously, like the Inquisitors are such a big part of Obi-Wan, right? And the job of the Inquisitors is to hunt down these remaining Jedi. And I think, as we've seen in the trailers, he's obviously leaving Tatooine, which makes sense. Like it would be kind of weird if this whole show took place on Tatooine when people are hunting him down, and then they just don't run into.
Could you imagine a show in Star Wars that they do, and the entire show takes place on Tatooine, and then suddenly another character appears?
Are you talking about a show that came out this year?
Yes, Book of Boba Fett.
Oh wow. No, but I do think other Jedi will kind of show up, and I think we could. I'm gonna say like Ahsoka potentially shows up in the show.
That to me makes a lot of sense. Like she shows up.
Look, and in the animated show, obviously Ahsoka and Obi-Wan have a very strong relationship, and a very important one. We haven't seen that in live action, and I think that would be a really like interesting dynamic to see play out, especially like obviously with the Ahsoka show coming next year. So it makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of story reasons, and there's a lot of like logistical reasons. I feel like.
What about Darth Maul? He's still when Obi-Wan Kenobi is supposed to be taking place. He is still running around the galaxy with his darksaber and getting a little bit crazier as the weeks go by.
I think that's the one that's harder to walk back, right? Like we talked about the Vader stuff, and I haven't seen you in a long time. Like, how does this fight happen? I think with what happens in the Twin Suns within Rebels,
right?
I think the subtext there is that they have not seen each other since Clone Wars, right? Since all of that kind of went down. So it just doesn't make sense to me for Maul to be kind of present within the show. And it's also just another factor when you have Darth Vader, when you have the Inquisitors, when you have Tatooine and Luke, and you have, potentially coming off the planet, maybe these other Jedi, just seems like maybe a step too far.
I don't think they're going to initially like cross paths and like draw lightsabers, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is something where, we know that Obi is running off planet. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it is something like, hey, Obi, there's this guy who's running
a reference.
Like a reference, or like maybe he sees a secret I don't know, something of that nature. I wouldn't be too surprised because, again, he's doing a whole bunch of criminal stuff.
He's a criminal mastermind.
I mean, yeah, kind of. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see that. The other character I think we may see is Bail Organa and R2-D2.
Well, I mean,
it's also a cold prediction.
It's not a Star Wars show if R2 does.
Yeah, exactly. So
that makes sense.
They also had mentioned like that the Obi-Wan Kenobi series it feels more like a movie as opposed to like.
Well, that was what was originally pitched. It was supposed to be like this Obi-Wan movie many years ago, and it kind of went through different stages of development. And then I think finally when kind of Disney Plus came out and the Mandalorian did well, there was interest in more shows, and then finally that's kind of how it happened. And I'm interested to see kind of the format, right? Mandalorian I think really proved that just because you're a series doesn't mean there's like a dip in quality of what there is on the screen. Star Wars doesn't just have to be in theater to be top tier. And Clone Wars, the animated shows I thought did that. Obviously, like animation is a different style than like live action, but the Mandalorian kind of paved way that you can still tell stories within this Disney Plus, within this series format. So. I think to like tell this Obi-Wan story, especially like depending on how it goes, like you need more time than you can necessarily get in a movie, right? And it's like then you get into like, do we do a trilogy of Obi-Wan movies? And like maybe that's too much, like 3 Obi-Wan movies in theaters, but like a show feels right potentially. So.
Do you think it's just going to be this? Was it 6 episodes?
6 episodes, yeah.
Do you think it's just that, or do you think there'll be a season 2?
Season 2.
Well,
it is being called a miniseries.
Right. But we've seen networks and everyone before be like, it's a miniseries, and then here's 15 seasons.
I think if there's a story to tell and there's something that's relevant and interesting, I think you could absolutely do it. but maybe it's a different time period. Like, it seems like they're telling a specific story within this time period. I remember when they first announced Obi-Wan, I was like, oh, maybe like each episode is a different time in his life. Like, there'll be episodes that are like pre-episode 1, you know, episodes between episodes 1 and 2, and then like, you know, between 3 and 4, and whatever. And that's not the case, I would say, from what we've seen in the trailers. But maybe that's what a second season is. Maybe you can jump around like his life a little bit, especially like you know his end, you know a lot of his middle, but you know there's other parts of his life to explore that can again like accentuate that story in between if there's a reason to do so.
We said something similar when the Andor show was announced, right? Where we know how that character, we know his end, right? We know his important impact in the rebellion.
He makes the ultimate sacrifice.
Makes the ultimate sacrifice, and we did also say like, how is a show like that going to be interesting? Like, remember with Black Widow when that came out, a lot of critics had said the same thing. Like, we know how this character is going to
Solo.
Solo's another one where it's just like, it's difficult.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. Like, it is difficult sometimes where you're like, why should I care about this character? But I think ultimately, like, if it's an interesting story and it's good, it can still be enjoyable. Like, I know Black Widow's not the most popular Marvel movie, but I actually really liked it. Like, it was a really good like spy espionage Marvel movie because it was well done. Like, it was good action.
It was a great introduction to also like new
characters, right? And I think like that's potentially what you can do as well. Like, you're continuing that story and that saga in a different way.
Definitely. That you can do.
You can do that through many avenues. Not just even series and movies, right? There are comics, books.
Have you read any like Star Wars comics or books? I know that when the High Republic books came out, we attempted to read, and then we all got busy. We tried. It's hard. It's a lot of work.
You should read that. It's important.
I tried doing audiobooks mostly, and then I was doing that on while I'm walking on a treadmill.
Yeah.
And then I would, true story, I would pay too much attention to the story, and then like not adjust my settings, or I'd fall.
You fell. Wow, you were that engrossed.
I was really like I was super engrossed.
Within the audio.
Yeah, but then I would try and
just. It was a really good audio.
It was a really good audiobook. Like, the audiobooks for High Republic are like top notch. But then I would try and just listen to the audiobook, but then I would get antsy being like, well, I'm not doing anything, I'm just sitting here listening.
Yeah.
And then it was a whole thing.
I read a lot of the now Legends canon when I was a kid.
You did?
Yeah, so I remember like in the library, like in our elementary and middle schools had like a lot of those Star Wars books, and so I would spend like my library period to like read something. I was like, Star Wars, I'm gonna read Star Wars. Like,
we had library period?
Yeah, you remember that?
No.
Yeah, we had library. That's so weird. The schools that we went to, and yeah, I would just kind of read some of those like old classics. I mean, since I haven't read a new Star Wars book in a while, but like I definitely want to read the new Thrawn books. Mm-hmm. I know they're not like brand new anymore, but especially with the Ahsoka show coming out, and as we speculated at the top of like, could Jude Law be playing Thrawn, or live action Thrawn seems to be coming. It'd be nice to kind of read some of that stuff. Star Wars books are great. Like, they've always, like, the Legend stuff is like really good. Comics I haven't been as into as much on the Star Wars front. But also the video games. Love the Star Wars video games. Knights of the Old Republic is one of my favorite games ever. I know you played the
Fallen Order.
Fallen Order
is a great game.
And isn't that second one coming out next year?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Well, there's a sequel coming out.
I know there were leaks about a sequel, and we're at an event where they're announcing Star Wars things, so maybe we'll get more information this week, and we'll leave that at that. So, let's go back. Obviously, like back to Celebration here. This is I don't know which number celebration, but it's been 3 years since the last celebration, obviously due to events of the world and everything. Yeah. How are you enjoying the show so far? Like, have you ran into people you haven't seen in a while? You're obviously, your story is kind of interesting from like a work perspective. Sure. Just because I know that you were at one company for the last celebration, and you're at a different company for this one. Sure. I'm kind of curious. This is actually more of like my own kind of like personal insight, because you were working at a content house that was making like I would argue, like old school internet videos, and now you're doing more like podcast type videos.
Yeah.
How's the experience like been different?
So it's different content, right? Yeah. You focus on different things. So when I was here 3 years ago, obviously the focus was video. So it's like getting into press lines after the kind of the panels and stuff, and getting the quick 3-minute bites with the cast as they're just kind of going along, and you get one question. You know, and working now on a podcast side, it's like you come with hosts, and you're not necessarily getting those interviews anymore. You're just kind of reacting to whatever the news is, kind of like we are, obviously, like within doing this live podcast. So that's the name of the game, and it's a little bit different. It's like we went to like a hotel room and we recorded our podcast instead of like from the celebration stage going to like another conference room and getting in line and kind of shouldering up with other people and whatnot. But no, I mean, today's the first day, so I haven't gotten to see a lot of people yet.
Have you even like walked the floor yet?
I haven't walked the floor yet.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that sucks.
That's tomorrow. That's the goal.
That's the goal.
Or maybe after this.
I mean, they're still open until 7 o'clock.
Yeah,
I think, and then that's it for today. And then tomorrow at 10.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Now, what about you? What's your experience been like?
Oh boy, I mean, I've mostly spent today not trying to like prevent myself from throwing up out of nerves because of this.
Oh wow.
Wow. Public speaking is very, very difficult.
Well, you've done a great job.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. Before we get out here, obviously it's the 20th anniversary, and our pod is called Was It Good?
Yes.
Right? And basically the idea of this pod is we review movies and TV shows. We answer that question, yes or no, was it good?
Yeah.
When you obviously saw Attack of the Clones,
yes,
you were like, that was good. You were like, this is amazing. Star Wars.
Yeah.
Would you say, so I'm going to ask you that question now as this jaded adult as you called yourself earlier.
Right.
So Arjuna
Yeah.
was Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Good.
I'm still going to say yes. That's good. I'm going to say yes because...
Stick to your guns 20 years later.
The reason we do Was It Good, the reason we kind of have this question is because there's so many different ways you can answer it, right? There's no one way, there's no one rubric. And even episode to episode, we vary. Like, we don't have consistent rubrics, and that's part of the fun. Star Wars is such a big part of what I enjoy in terms of entertainment, right? It's right up there. It's one of my favorite things. And Attack of the Clones is part of that. And I think for all the reasons we listed, especially with having all of these different shows and all of the other different things around it, still makes it enjoyable. Is it the best technical film ever? Has the CGI held up? For listeners of our podcast, Ravi notoriously loves to talk about CGI. The CGI does not hold up, okay? It was a movie from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's fair, and you can criticize those things, but for me, when I watch the movie, I still have a lot of fun, and I still enjoy it, and I still know the lines, and I still enjoy
Real quick, do you fast forward during, like, every Star Wars movie, I think, has, like, that cringe moment? Actually, you know what? I think every movie ever made has that cringe moment. So the cringe moment in Episode 2, to me anyway, is when they're on Naboo
and they're falling in love.
Like, even as like a kid, that was weird to me, and even watching it now, it's still weird and awkward to me. It's weirder, way weirder now. Yes, still cringe, right?
Yeah,
you're still fast forward.
No, you have to experience it because that's part of the experience.
That's true.
It's like that's part of like you're uncomfortable and you're like, what is happening?
Why is this?
It's like, wait, when you guys last saw each other, like you were a little kid. It's weird.
So
it's really weird when you think about it.
Yeah.
But you have to watch it because that is part of the whole.
Experience.
That's the whole
It's the
experience.
Yeah.
You can't enjoy the rest of it without getting through those parts.
Real quick, back to CGI. You know the fun fact about the clones, right? In episodes 2 and 3,
they're clones.
Well, yes, thank you. But they, that they never made actual armor. They're all CG, right?
That makes sense.
Yeah. I only found that out like maybe a year ago, and that still kind of blows my mind a little bit.
But that makes sense. So you're into a lot of collectibles and whatnot, right? And like it's notoriously hard to find clone armor versus like Empire armor and First Order armor comparatively, right? Like, what's the helmet company that you really?
I'm not gonna.
We don't talk about that anymore. I'm just saying, like, even like all the different mainstream companies, like, at least when I normally look, it's just like I've always wanted like a clone helmet, and it's like you can't find official ones, or it's hard to find those in comparison to like a regular Stormtrooper helmet or a First Order helmet.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah. So it's all everything's CGI.
This is CGI.
Could you imagine?
Oh God, no. You can ask me, and then I think, yeah.
Oh, you want me to ask?
Yeah, you have to ask me the question too.
If the movie was good.
Yeah, duh.
Do I have to?
Yes, because you know my answer.
Ravi was Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Good.
20 years later.
Yeah.
The cringe of the dating scenes. Yes, it's still good. Still good. I still have fun with that movie. Just like you said, it's fun. It's the first time we see full-on in my mind, Star Wars. It was like a ground battle assault and everything. Like that's the first time. Like it's a very iconic whole sequence. Jedi being surrounded, and then you got the droids and everything, and all these troopers coming in. It's still the coolest thing ever. And then especially when Star Wars Battlefront. Star Wars Battlefront 2 came out, and you got to recreate that.
Start on Geonosis, that's always the first level.
Right, yeah. I was going to bring up Battlefront. That's a game we played a lot on our good old PS2.
Great system, works well.
And I think, Geonosis is obviously a big part of that. And I think because we got to play that game, we played that game so much as kids, it sticks out more of that scene and that. And I think sometimes randomly I'll just on YouTube pull up that scene because it's just it's just fun, it's just fun to see that stuff. Yeah. Again, CGI is terrible. It's bad. It's real bad.
It's not that it's bad. They did for the time period, it was top notch.
Yeah,
they did it age well. It's 20 years later.
But but then I think about this, right? It's in 2002. 80 years ago, it was 1982. And we would have been oh, that's bad CGI from the 80s when we're watching in 2000. So it makes sense. It tracks that it doesn't look that good today. And that's good. That just shows you how
tech is progressing and we understand lighting better and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's everything that I've got. I think I'm going to get out of here, so I'm just going to leave. No, I'm kidding.
You're just going to leave?
I'm just going to walk off stage. I can do that, right?
I don't think you can just walk off stage.
That's true.
I think we're here forever.
That is very true.
Remember we were joking right before, they told us we have the last show, so we're just going to fill until tomorrow morning.
Yeah, we're just going to keep going for the next, 15 hours here. No, that's going to be, I think, everything for us here, guys. Thank you so much for jumping in. We do have a contest going right now on our Twitter channel. If you go and follow us at Was It Good on Twitter. We're giving away the Hasbro Black Series Asajj Ventress lightsaber. So definitely just go follow us, give us a nice little comment, give us one of your favorite Star Wars memories. We'll be closing that contest on Saturday, and if you're here and you're picked, we'll just give it to you right then. We're also on TikTok, Instagram at Was It Good Pod, and then this entire live stream will also be on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/wasitgood.
And then the audio version will be on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts. That was it good.
That was good.
Yeah.
Beyond that, that's gonna do it. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you.